Okay, are we recording? Are we ready? Great, so as Natalie said, we were working together on a project to prioritize areas for street tree planting in Newark. So we followed this process, sort of a little research phase, followed by using the iTree landscape tool, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a second, followed by some sort of local level GIS analysis, and then interviews with stakeholders and experts. So iTree is a pretty cool tool. It's free, anybody can use it. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it creates what they call a priority planting index based on criteria that you input. So it has these categories here. And yeah, you can pair census data with a bunch of different climate indicators. There's a lot of air quality layers. And then they also will calculate tree canopy benefits. So once we do eventually decide where and how many trees to plant, it can tell you what their impact is on the area in terms of stormwater removal or carbon sequestration. So there are a few drawbacks. The land cover data is from 2010 or 2011. So there's definitely more recent data available, but it has not been uploaded into the tool. You're unable to add local data layers. So some of the national databases are not as good or not as granular as some of the data that we have access to. And there's unfortunately no way to upload that into iTree and run their scenarios. And then the census block group is the smallest geography available. So I'm going to show you a couple of priority planting scenarios. The iTree default scenario prioritizes based on population density. So these three things are the criteria selected, population density, tree cover per capita, and tree stocking level. So with tree stocking level, it's the percent of pervious land occupied by tree cover. And we went back and forth about which metric or criteria to use for this. Should we use plantable space? Should we use open space? There are a lot of different options, but tree stocking isn't perfect. For example, it will say that a soccer field is plantable space, so it doesn't totally distinguish between that, but in general, we have found it to be the best proxy for availability of space to plant trees. So as we move through the scenarios, we'll start to see different areas pop up over and over again. This is the stormwater runoff scenario. I think the first framing of this problem that we looked at was for stormwater benefits because of the opportunity of a partnership for the with the Department of Water. So in this scenario, the low avoided runoff means there's a high opportunity to avoid runoff and catch the water with the trees. So putting an environmental justice lens on it, we did a couple of different sort of the common EJ lenses. We have percent of, or this is high minority population density. Again, you're starting to see some of the similar areas pop up over and over again. This is another metric. They have two different population minorities. One is just the straight up percent minority population, which is this view. The previous view layered the density of population on top of it. So we're showing you all of these views because we want to eventually hear from you about which ones we should use. So showing you some of the options. Poverty line as well, starting to see some of the same trends. And so from stakeholder or expert interviews, we found that imperviousness is a great proxy for areas with high potential for a good impact for trees and enhanced tree pits. So our sort of proposed scenario is looking at high impervious areas because they suggest high potential areas. And imperviousness is also associated with urban heat island effect and lack of green space. Uh-oh. Let's see. Okay, well, you can see it now. I'm not sure why that wasn't loading. So we're moving into our desktop GIS analysis using local data. Let me go back.
Caroline, do you want me to try sharing screen and see if it would help? Okay, why don't you stop for a second and then I will load it.
So yeah, the next few maps that you'll see are going to be with our more local data, most of which is from the environmental resources inventory, which has recently been, maybe it's finished, I'm not sure. It's really great. And some community input data as well.
Just because I have to like navigate to the right page before I start screen sharing, why don't you just share what the sources are for the flooding layers, and then we'll display them momentarily.
Sure. So we have 3 sources for the flooding. We have a Newark PD flood advisory list that they send out ahead of storms to tell you to avoid certain areas that are known to flood. We have a list of catch basins that they make sure to inspect and clear before any rain events because they're known to flood. And then we have a layer from community meetings where folks were asked to identify areas that flooded. So the community input is the purple, red is NPD, and then the yellow is the catch basin list. Great. So moving to the next slide, it's a quick one. It's just all the flooding will now be orange from here on out. And so this shows flooding with the CSO outfall locations. Just important to see the context of that. Here we have a detail section, 3 sections. You can see with the 3 different colors, it means that the 3 different data sources that we have really been backing each other up, that there is flooding in these areas. So of course, trees have great co-benefits. And one of the other sort of lenses that we wanted to look at it through was prioritizing areas that do not have access to green space. So you can see here where the green spaces are. Another indicator is existing tree canopy. Here we have 2 views. On the left is high resolution, so you can really get an idea of where the trees actually are. But then on the right, it is the tree canopy by percentage of the census tract. And then you can also see some of the same trends of potential priority areas. Here we have the percent impervious layered with flooding, again, in the eastward, lots of imperviousness, not surprising that there's flooding. And then finally, looking into air quality, this is the air toxic respiratory hazard index. So darker is worse air quality, lighter is better. And noting that there's definitely some concentration in the eastward with air quality issues. So now we've taken the suggested scenario, which is the high imperviousness, and we layered over our like community input flooding data. And through this, we have identified several areas that we think should be priority areas. But that is something that we want your input on as well. And one thing to note about some of the tracks is that if it's near a park and green space, it might seem like it's less of a priority to iTree. If you note the cluster down in the South Ward, there's a park right near there, which is why it's turning up green, even though it does experience flooding issues. So, yep, this is just the sort of preliminary analysis. We need to finalize the selection of priority areas and then dig into the status at each of the area, make sure that there's space for trees, that they won't be harmed in any way. And we've also heard that tree stormwater works better if tree pits are sort of continuous. So it's almost like a trench with like trees, and then you can put like permeable pavement or porous pavement in between them. So it's like one continuous tree pit that will have the biggest effect on stormwater removal. And then, yeah, this is a thank you to everyone who helped us out.
Great, and can just because I'm screen sharing, I can't tell if, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so one exercise that we wanted to do, this slide was an example of how we can use the annotation feature on Zoom to basically like gather input and just sort of drop some circles. And so I'm gonna share this screen large and invite folks that are on the call. And my screen doesn't look the same anymore because I'm screen sharing, but in any case, my memory is that when you go to like view options at the top of your computer-based platform, for anyone that's on the phone, I don't 100% know how to sort of narrate what this looks like, but if you expand that, there's a button called annotate. When you're in annotate, you can pick a color, you can pick whether it's a shape or you're drawing. There are a few options that are provided there. And in a moment, I'm going to invite folks to help us get to something like this. In this meeting setting, and we'll just spend like a minute or two doing that together before sort of opening it up to a little bit more discussion. I just remember how to. So maybe Caroline, if you want to drop some circular annotations in the ones that we had from the earlier version of the iTree scenario. And for folks that have never done the annotation before, you can clear your own drawings or you can clear everyone's drawings. So if you're going to clear your own drawing, just be very careful not to select the option called clear all drawings. And then Audrey, I'm going to ask for your assistance in grabbing a screen capture of, you know, when folks have had a chance to participate. Are you doing it? I can't tell. Nothing's on my screen yet. Oh, it looks like I still have annotating privileges. Has everyone contributed who would like to?
How do you do it again?
So you expand your view options from the top of your Zoom menu. There's a button called Annotate. And then once you're there, there are any number of options for either drawing something, adding an arrow, adding a heart, you know, there's options there, play with it. All right, folks are getting super excited about this and I'm grateful. It looks like I actually can save it even though I'm sharing screen at the moment. I didn't know I was going to have the option to do that, but Audrey, if you can also grab a screen capture just so we can have a second one. So I'm seeing, just to sort of do a little bit of synthesize, I'm seeing quite a bit of sort of agreement among folks for something. Oops, that's not what I wanted it to look like. Something in this area, clearly. Something over here. There's a couple of arrows over here, or circles over here. There's like different versions of circles in this area. And then can I ask for some input from whoever drew this line going down what I think is Bloomfield? If somebody wants to sort of offer some narration, because what comes next for me as a process is that because the iTree desktop analysis scenario is based on, you know, okay data, but ground truthing needs to happen, is that we're using this process to do that more like on the ground, driving around, checking things out, you know, checking like accuracy of our desktop findings, etc. So we do want to have a shorter list of areas, and we were using both the flooding areas and anything that comes up as like hot pink on iTree as like the way to pick out our faves.
That was me. I was just kind of circling areas I know a lot of people might be walking on.
Okay, cool.
All right, so Natalie, how do you feel like this is a good place to mark? Yeah. I feel like we can just keep circling the map. Like, let's just, I think this is good. All of it.
Definitely good for me. And I'll just stop sharing now. And I don't know, Audrey, if you want to continue the recording going on, but thank you everyone for your input. Really, really grateful.